They told you to stop crying. They told you there was nothing to be afraid of. They told you that you were being too sensitive. And so you learned to make yourself smaller, to fold the feeling back inside, to smile when you were breaking. What happened to that child? What happened to those feelings that were never allowed to exist? They didn't disappear. They went somewhere else. And today, we're going to find out where. It is what happens when a child cries and is told to stop. When a child is scared and is told there is nothing to be afraid of. When a child is angry and is sent to their room. Again and again, the message arrives. What you feel is not welcome here, and the child learns to agree. Today, we are going to talk about what happens in the body, the brain, and the soul when a child is not allowed to feel. Emotional neglect is one of the most invisible forms of childhood wounding. It leaves no marks. It happens not in what was done, but in what was never done. It happens in the absence of curiosity about your inner world, comfort when you were scared, permission to be angry without punishment, celebration of your joy that didn't feel conditional. Many adults with histories of emotional neglect say the same thing, but nothing bad happened to me. I had food, shelter, a family that cared. And all of that can be true. And still, something essential was missing. When emotions are consistently suppressed or invalidated in childhood, the impact on the developing brain is measurable and real. The limbic system, the brain's emotional center, develops through co-regulation, meaning a child's emotional brain learns to process feelings by being in the presence of a regulated adult who can hold space for those feelings without becoming overwhelmed or dismissive. When that co-regulation is not available, when the adult is dismissive, overwhelmed, or simply absent, the child's limbic system does not learn how to complete emotional cycles. It learns instead to interrupt them. The feeling begins. The body activates. And then, before the emotion can move through and complete, it is cut off, suppressed, pushed back down. Over time, this interruption becomes automatic. The child no longer has to consciously suppress. The nervous system does it for them. Feelings get smaller, more distant, harder to access. This is not weakness. This is adaptation. A brilliant, necessary adaptation. That becomes a prison in adulthood. Because the body keeps the score. What was never felt does not simply dissolve. It waits. It lives in chronic tension in the jaw, the shoulders, the chest. It lives in anxiety that has no clear cause, in a numbness that settles where feeling used to be, in an inability to cry even when the grief is real. The body learned. Feelings are dangerous, and it has been protecting you from them ever since. What does emotional suppression look like in an adult? It looks like someone who is highly functional and completely disconnected from their own interior. It looks like intellectualizing everything, understanding your feelings conceptually while barely touching them. It looks like relationships where intimacy feels suffocating, where someone loving you too closely makes you want to disappear. It looks like not knowing what you want, not because you are indecisive, but because wanting requires feeling, and feeling was never safe. It looks like a chronic low-grade emptiness, not depression exactly, not sadness exactly. More like a muffled version of yourself, present but not fully arrived. It looks like being the person everyone leans on, while you lean on no one, because needing was the first thing you learned to hide. The pathway back to feeling is not dramatic. It does not require reliving every painful moment. It does not require falling apart. It requires, first, the radical act of noticing. What is happening in my body right now? Is there tightness anywhere? Heaviness? a pull towards something or away from something. That signal, however faint, is your emotional body trying to speak. You do not have to understand it immediately. You do not have to name it perfectly. You only have to stop interrupting it. Let it be there. Give it 30 seconds. Breathe. Emotion is information. It is not a threat. It is not weakness. It is the language your body uses to tell you what is true. And like any language, it comes back with practice, with patience, with someone who speaks it alongside you. If you grew up in a home where feelings were not welcome, I want to say something clearly. You were not too much. You were not too emotional. You were not broken for having feelings that needed to be expressed. You were a child in a home that did not have the tools to meet you where you were. That is not your failure. That is a gap in what was available. And now, as an adult, you have something that child never had. The choice. The choice to build the kind of relationship with your own inner world that you deserved from the beginning. To feel what is true. To name it without shame. To let it move through you. And discover that it does not destroy you. It completes you. Subscribe to Soul Decoded. And in the comments, was emotion welcomed in your home growing up? I'd love to hear your experience.